Member for Blain.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I find it very rich that the Leader of the Opposition stands up and lectures us about our record on crime, being part of a government that for 8 years changed the laws, watered down the laws and created the crime crisis that we found when we came to government. I find that unbelievable, but Territorians have judged, and that's why you find yourself diminished on that side of the House. To sum up the previous government's policy on crime, I'd like to thank the member for Daly in his contribution on the week that was a few weeks ago, where he said, "We'd never come out and promise that we would actually fix crime, and that's the difference between us and what the CLP said they would do." Thank you, member for Daly. You nailed it. You absolutely hit it on the head. The previous government were more concerned with managing the media instead of managing crime, instead of managing the budget, instead of managing the economy, all the things, all the portfolios that ministers are responsible for. They were focused on media releases, boundless possible, what's our next announceable? Oh, crime's going up. Quick, let's do a release. What can we do? Oh, let's raise the maximum penalty for this thing. But in reality, when you looked at what they actually did, they were eroding consequences for criminals across the board. They were putting victims last instead of first. But this government is different. I am proud to stand here as part of this government which is putting Territorians first, which is putting victims first. I don't know how many Territorians I stood with during my campaign who had been broken into, been the victims of crime, victims of assault, and they were just so traumatised. And some of them who were going through the victim part of the justice process just shook their hands. There's one story that still sits with me. They'd been broken into, and luckily they and some neighbours had been able to apprehend the offender, and then the police came, and it was a youth. And so the police apprehended the youth and said, "Oh, come up to the station and make a statement." And the kid was laughing. This is what stuck with me. The kid was laughing and said, "Ha ha, I'll be out of there before you are." And they said, "What? That didn't make any sense." So they went up to the police station, they gave their statement, it took about an hour. When they were driving home, they saw that same youth offender halfway back to their house walking along the side of the road. So they thought, hang on, he was right. He did get out of the police station before we did. But hang on, he broke into our house. How is it that we spent more time inside a police station as the victim of a crime than the offender? How does that make sense? On what planet does that make sense? When we came to government, we found not just a crime crisis, a budget crisis. We found everywhere we looked, cliff funding. The previous government was really good at hiding its shenanigans, pretending that it wasn't going to breach the debt ceiling by cutting off funding for programs that they knew they would have to fund. They knew they would have to pay for, but they just chopped it off and pretended that it didn't exist. And we've had to clean up that mess. Just like we're having to clean up the mess of the crime crisis, which, might I remind those opposite, for the last, 8 years, every year the stats went up, not a little bit, but a lot. Now we actually see positive trends in the data, and the Leader of the Opposition proudly talked about a 9% increase. Well, that's not too bad considering some of the increases we've seen in previous years, particularly in those areas that have been much, much higher, particularly in the sunsetting of the Stronger Future laws, which your government presided over, even though they were told, and the member for 𝙍𝙀𝙇𝙀𝑉, who I believe was one of the responsible ministers at the time. 1 year ago, in my electorate of Blain, it was literally on fire. It's not on fire. Thank you very much.
Opposition Leader.
It's much improved, actually. So we had, 1 year ago, we had a literal, you can go on my Facebook, go back 12 months, you can see it's all there. We had riots across Emery Avenue in my electorate.
Member for Blain, can you take your seat? Opposition Leader, you've had one of your members, a member for 𝙍𝙀𝙇𝙀𝙑, draw to my attention Standing Order 20, interruption of debate. If I hear any of you in this chamber interrupting the member for Blain or any other speaker, I shall be giving you a warning. I'm not in a good mood. Please continue, member for Blain.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. We had riots across Emery Avenue. It was a regular occurrence. You'd wake up and you would check the community groups, and there would be stories of be careful. People are walking the streets. They're checking doors. These masked youths, were picked up on my security cameras. One particular morning, there was security footage and handheld mobile footage of what I can only describe as a riot going on in the middle of Emery Avenue. And it appears that it was the result of two distinct family groups who'd come in from community who were staying across the road from each other, and they brought their conflict into town. I'd been asked to come and visit some people who had private units that joined onto some public housing. They were separated by what I can only describe as a 5-metre high chain link fence with barbed wire on the top. And they were just at wit's end because every night they would see stolen vehicles in the car park opposite. They would see children as young as 2 and 3 years of age exposed to violence, domestic violence, people drinking all night. And I went there and I sat with them at 10 and 11 o'clock at night. Go back, check my Facebook. I was there. I did a live talking about it. And then only a few days or a week later, some individuals from that group who were tagging a well-known gang tag on things around that area, there ended up being a stolen vehicle dumped around the corner, which was then set alight. And the community was up in arms. What is going on here? We're now 12 months later. We're doing the best we can with what we inherited. We inherited a complete mess. We inherited 8 years of people being told, behave how you want. There won't be a consequence. We'll drop you home to a responsible adult. I've got 3 boys. That is not how they are raised. They are raised to know that they have responsibilities and there are consequences for their behaviour. If they behave in a good way and they look after their brothers and they're nice to people outside and they look after their mum, there's positive consequences. If they hit their brothers, if they misbehave, there's negative consequences. This is how you raise children. It is not rocket science. On what planet does taking away consequences and just returning offenders back to the environment that created them, on what planet is that how you deal with troubled youth? We were very clear in our election platform. Yes, we will crack down on crime and offenders. We'll also deal with the root causes. You can walk and chew gum at the same time. I want to quickly, as time's going down, I want to quickly talk about some crime stats. So we've got some good positive indicators around property and house break-ins. So robbery, violence and theft, 29%. That's home invasions. I've sat with multiple people who've had aggressive invaders inside their home unexpectedly late at night, and I tell you what, it is extremely traumatising. These are people who are suffering from PTSD for significant periods of time. It deeply affects their mental health. This is something that we cannot tolerate. House break-ins, 31%. Commercial break-ins, 16%. Other theft, 15%. These are all down. There's still a lot further to go. Domestic violence assaults NT-wide, 9% up. Alcohol-related assaults, 8% up. We're still dealing with the overhang of the previous government's failed policy on alcohol and consequences. But as we roll out our programs, including our police, public safety officers, we'll be able to intervene earlier and stop things escalating to the point where police have to respond to a domestic violence and a serious assault. Thank you, Madam Speaker.